in hushed tones and as cautionary tales as to what could happen if one crossed into the wrong neighborhood. Legend had it that Billy Laurie and Roy Drillick beat up 10 cops at Orchard Beach one night before being subdued and carted off to jail. These were serious Bronx badasses, yet our vision of being in a gang was desperately romantic. Imagining ourselves fighting other gangs, but praying we'd never have to. But being Panthers was deeply serious to us and therefore central to what we imagined as the vital ingredient for our budding complex masculinity. Our next step was to have a uniform that identified us as the Panthers. Most of us had graduated from the childish blue jeans, cuffs rolled up, to black jeans, no cuffs. Around our waist, we wore black leather garrison belts. The square chrome metal buckle pushed away from the front to sit coolly on our left hip. Most of us wore black loafers or brown suede desert boots with white socks, especially when we went to school or were going to a party on the weekend. During the daylight hours, when we weren't in school, we usually wore white Chuck Taylor Converse sneakers. Because during the day, we played basketball every chance we could. Plus, as we all understood, sneakers were needed to climb over fences and walls in case we needed to get away from the cops or rival gangs. But the couture de resistance was our discovery of dungaree jackets. There was simply nothing like standing in front of the mirror before going out into the neighborhood or to a party. A perfected pompadour labored stylishly in place with a plastic pocket comb, a long sleeve white shirt open at the neck with cuffs rolled halfway up the forearms, and a muscle shirt beneath it providing a flash of color just beneath our throats. Slipping into the dungaree jacket was like putting on invincible armor. After assessing that everything in your reflection was perfect, the final flair was to take the edges of the jacket collar, snapping it out and up so it covered the back of your neck. There was no cooler image imaginable. With all this in place, you were ready, and you knew it. Every teenage boy knew it. But what distinguished us from every other teenager in the world, or so we felt, was the panther head patch that we wore on the right shoulder of our jackets. We had found these patches at Hijinks Sporting Goods on Jerome Avenue. Hijinks was owned by one of our neighbors, Mr. Isaacson, and everyone went there to get school jackets, athletic equipment, and sneakers. When we came upon the panther patches, we bought them all. We then excitedly brought them home where we watched in anticipation our mothers sewing them onto our jackets. The irony of this domestic act being responsible for the completion of our rebellious gang image was completely lost upon us. As we donned our uniform and raced to Gale Place to gather, finally, as Panthers.
You've come a long way, Tommy. You're back.
And I have just two more short readings to share with you. I have to do this, and I hope this is family friendly.
If you want to talk, could you go outside? Because we can't hear when everybody's talking.
This is the amalgamated one. Hey, hold it down back there. All right, so hopefully this is a family-friendly show, so I can talk about the first time I smoked pot. I hope that's okay.
Yeah!
You know, it was a transition, it was part of the scene, it was part of the 60s. All right, here we go. Everything about him was shamanic. The beads he wore, the pouch at his hip, his walking stick, his unruly beard. His pace was slow and his voice was methodical, as if he chewed his words into place before uttering them. Wild, curly brown hair edging below his ears gave him a just woke up kind of look, which his hooded eyelids only enhanced. Months ago, he had offered to initiate me into the drug culture, and I refused. Now, as one of the last of my friends to turn on and smoke pot, I thought I was ready.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Among my closest friends, I was one of the last holdouts to smoke pot. Finally, in the summer of 1966, halfway through my 15th year, I made my decision. I had grown tired of so many of my friends going off to get high and me staying back out of fear. Frankly, it was a gnawing loneliness as much as my curiosity that compelled me to take the step I never thought I would take. One thing I was certain about, though, I was not going to do this capriciously. I was very scared, and I was determined to find a trusted expert to turn me on. I felt like I needed a ritual of initiation in order to make what I knew was going to be a huge leap into another world. Despite our age differences, Bob Glesser and I had always been friendly whenever we ran into each other. At the rail or in the playground, he'd watch some of the basketball games and we'd chat a bit about my athleticism and superior playing skills. We all knew he was a pothead, yet he never teased me or any of my friends about our weekend drinking. He simply knew what he liked and went about his business. Bob had matter-of-factly offered to get me high once or twice before, and I had refused. Now, as I approached this momentous decision, standing on the precipice of what appeared to be my beleaguered conscience as a choice between remaining in heaven or toppling into hell, I scanned the neighborhood each day for someone to guide me across the threshold. Bob Glesser appeared as the only person that made sense to me. It was late June, school was out, and the heat and humidity of the New York summer was in full sun-drenched display. On the appointed day, Glesser and I met in the playground. As we took what felt like a long, slow walk, I could feel every eye in the neighborhood on me. I told only a few of my friends who had already started smoking pot about my plan to get high for the first time with Glesser. Yet to anyone even half aware of the drug scene in the neighborhood, there was no conceivable reason other than getting high that would have Bob Glesser and I disappearing into the golf course and moving out of sight behind a grassy hill behind the 16th green. I knew what I was doing, and now it seemed like everyone else did too. We walked in silence until Bob felt we had found the appropriate spot. We sat in the tall grass under the open sky, yet mainly hidden from golfers and parkies and everyone else. He pulled a pack of zigzag right rolling papers from his shirt pocket. He laid these out on the ground. Then he reached his thumb and forefinger into a gray plastic film canister with a black plastic cover that he had taken from another pocket. He took a pinch of marijuana and spread it on the rolling papers. Within seconds, with barely a twist of his fingers and a slither of his tongue on the gluey edges of the paper, we had sitting before us two nearly symmetrical joints. Bob had me pick one up and place it between my lips. As he lit it with his lighter, he told me to puff gently and inhale, keeping the smoke in my lungs for as long as I could. As I withdrew the joint from my mouth and held it in my hand, I finally exhaled, a huge cloud of smoke. Bob nodded his head, remarking, "Good lungs." Exuding a supremely serene and sagacious countenance, he lit up the second joint and began smoking it. We sat there and smoked the joint slowly with care and a sense of purpose, ritually savoring the growing feeling of peace and well-being, smiling at each other between tokes. Few words were uttered, except when Bob asked me how I was doing. I could feel my eyes and body relaxing, getting heavier. I could feel the heat of the sun warming me inside and out. "I feel good," I told him, "really good." When we were finished, Bob suggested we simply sit there and enjoy the fine summer day. And we did, for what seemed like hours. As the heaviness in my body morphed into a generalized mellowness, we began to make our way back. I walked as if in a dream, stepping gently in respect to the grass. I never felt so light and in my body at the same time. It was such a good feeling. Re-entry back into the playground caused me to shift suddenly into a sharp-edged feeling of self-consciousness, because I was sure that everybody else knew what had transpired just over the hill on the golf course. With a sudden, protective intuition, Bob placed his arm around my shoulder in the most reassuring manner, calming me instantly, returning me to my blissful state. When we arrived at the rail, a few of my friends were waiting in expectant anticipation. They immediately gathered around, patting me on the back, welcoming me into the pothead tribe. As Bob turned and left, quietly disappearing into the neighborhood, I told my friends what an incredible experience I had. For me, the 60s had officially begun. Marijuana had opened my mind and heart. I had turned on and was definitely tuning in, dropping